Hey, LeGrand Alive, I want to welcome you to a new show called Eastern Oregon Conversations. And before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, EONI, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, Grand Ron Hospital, and Med Transport. And today, I have the privilege to have Steve West with me here on set. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, and Steve and I have been friends for quite a few years and been involved in production for quite a long time, and you've been on LeGrand Alive shows before, but not necessarily as yourself. I think you were on a gun show and talked about some guns and stuff, yeah,
usually a guest to someone else's program.
Right. Yeah. So, but this is an opportunity to kind of delve into you and a recent film that you have made. And I've been wanting to get you on a show for a while to talk about your journey and stuff, because everything that we do at LeGrand Alive, we kind of hope that it has a local tie. And a big win for any community is when it's local, but it's international in reach in some way or another. I mean, that's a huge win for a company that is local but sells a product out of the area. And you are that's who you are. That's kind of your deal. So tell us a little bit about your journey, and just tell it, the audience might not know about your shows. So kind of tell us how you got here and where you were raised, and give me your life story kind of in a synopsis.
Well, I grew up here in Northeast Oregon. Went to school in Walla Walla, Washington a couple of years, and then graduated in Milton Freewater. I grew up hunting and fishing. I mean, outdoors were always a big part of our life. And when I finally got old enough to figure out what I wanted to do for a living, or with the rest of my life, or what I was going to be when I grew up, I decided I wanted to be a guide. And so I guided deer hunts and elk hunts and duck hunts and goose hunts. And then I quickly realized that the guiding side of things was fun, but it really wasn't a way to make a full-time living. Most guides and outfitters do that as a seasonal type work. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I got introduced to some folks who really thought that I would be good as a hunting consultant, that I would do well to book trips for them, to bring them customers. And this all came about when the internet was just getting started. Mm-hmm. It's the late 90s. Websites were like, oh my gosh, you've got a website, And out of the blue, I got approached by somebody who wanted to make a site for someone in the hunting industry, and no outfitters, guides, booking agents, anybody had a website yet. We scoured the internet for what little of the internet there was back then. And we realized there wasn't any competition in that space. And that's when we came up with steveshunts.com. And that launched my booking agency initially much faster than, let's say, a company would ever get started today, because everyone was new to the internet and they were looking at, oh my word, if you typed in hunting, there was only one place to go, to my website. And of course, it wasn't very long before there were lots of other websites up. Within months there was a lot of competition in the space. But that got me into being a fairly prominent booking agent and hunting consultant. Reinvested in my education in terms of traveling. I was still guiding. I would guide in Alaska. I would guide a little bit in Oregon. I would travel to outfitters and guides all over the world, and really started building a resume, so that if someone called me and said, well, what do you know about this? I could say, well, I've been there and done that. That was my goal, was to basically do it all. Mm-hmm. And I've been fortunate. I've pretty much done it all. I have a hunting resume that maybe is only exceeded by a handful of people in the world. But the next stage in running a company is, how do you market that company?
Right.
Now I had Steve's Outdoor Adventures, the booking agency, and I didn't know how to make myself stand out from the rest. And a friend of mine was in Oregon elk hunting with me at the time, and we were watching, at the time, was a new network called Outdoor Channel. And some gold digging guys had kind of made this network, and there were 7 hunting shows on there. And I knew some guys from Oregon that had a show called Northwest Hunter. Rick Young, good friend of mine, has been for 20 years. I did a show with him. I wanted to see what it was all about. And then this friend of mine was over, and we were all kind of together, and he said, we could do a better job than that. Mm-hmm. I said, you think so? He said, I know so. He quit his job. He was an engineer for Sprint in Ohio. His name was John Bleasdale. He quit his job, learned how to run a camera and edit, and Steve's Outdoor Adventures 15 seasons ago started with John Bleasdale behind the camera and editing, and we were working our tails off to make this happen. And the rest is history. We've just, for 15 seasons, we started on the Sportsman Channel and Men's Channel, and then Men's Channel went bankrupt and off the air, and we transitioned to the Outdoor Channel, where I've been for 12 years.
Wow.
And now Sportsman Channel actually got bought. We went back on the air on Sportsman Channel and Outdoor Channel, alternating half the year on one network, half the year on the other. But it's all big game hunting, and that's my entire television career had really been in the outdoor industry until recently.
Wow. So if people go to their cable guide, they can find Steve's Outdoor Adventures, or the name of your current show.
Well, everything is Steve's Outdoor Adventures.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a 2-year run of the Adventure series,
Okay.
Which is now on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
But we continued with the Steve's Outdoor Adventures half-hour programs, simply because the half-hour platform seems to work better in the outdoor space.
Sure. Okay. Well, very cool. And what a lot of people, I say, they just don't even know that there's a major television national show that is produced and run right out of Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty amazing.
I keep a pretty low-key presence locally. This is a big hunting and fishing community.
Right.
And there are a lot of people that I know and I'm friends with locally, but I don't drive around town. I got rid of the truck that has the Steve West logo on the side of the truck. I like to keep a low profile because I want everyone to have their own identity, and I don't want LeGrand, Oregon, to be known as that place where Steve West produces his show. Yeah. LeGrand is so much bigger than that. There's so much more to this valley than some guy that gets paid to go hunting, right? Yeah. And so I've always kind of wanted to keep that low-key presence other than within my my circle of friends.
Well, and I appreciate that, but it also is a huge advantage for Eastern Oregon. That's a kudo for us that somebody who literally could live anywhere you wanted decided that you want to stay in your home space. That's a cool thing. So
I wouldn't want to live anywhere else, really.
Yeah, and it's funny the number of people that don't get what a special place we have right here. So
wake up in a valley, you've got the Blue Mountains behind you, the Eagle Caps in front of you. And if you go just east, there's the Elkhorns. It's you go around the corner, you're in the Wallowa Valley. You're 45 minutes away from another beautiful valley, and mountains and wildlife and outdoor activities. And do we live a little ways away from a metropolitan area? But I think that's kind of by design. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, so you've had this television thing going on for a while, and you have that well honed after 12 or 15 season or however long it's been.
15 years.
Yeah. And so then you recently decided that you were going to do a film, and the name of the film is
A Nation Divided.
A Nation Divided. And how did you what made you get to the point where you wanted to do a film? What laid you down? It's a fairly monumental, the production is similar, but the amount of production for a half-hour episode, and I've worked on your episodes, so I know, and so the difference between a half-hour episode and a film is a fairly significant project, especially with the travel that you took on also.
You could have told me that before I bid off that that project.
Yeah. So how did you get here? Tell us about this journey.
So year after year I would go home, and at Christmas, I'm from a big family. There's 4 of us boys and we have 1 sister. And every year poor girl, and she's the youngest, and we would get together at Mom's house, and that's where we spent Christmas. And we would get together, and we all went different ways in life, I've got one brother that's very liberal, one brother that's very conservative, one brother that's still trying to figure out what he wants to be. I'm rather conservative in a lot of my beliefs, but I also am fairly, kind of middle of the road. And my sister's fairly what I would consider liberal. We have an aunt that's very liberal. Anyway, we would get into these political discussions about all the issues that are affecting our country. And some of the fights and arguments were incredible. I mean, you're talking about, verbal knockdown, drag out,
Sure.
I can't stand, but we were always able to gain our senses, find some middle ground, agree to disagree maybe, but see where the other was coming from. And initially the thought came to me that I needed to bring a film crew to my mom's house for Christmas and just film my brothers and sister and I interacting. And if we could get Aunt Georgia involved, awesome, just to throw another left of center in the mix, so to speak. And then it occurred to me that really what was happening within our own family was happening on a much larger scale.
That's right.
Yeah, our nation was basically the same as our family. So many different ideas going two different directions and very little common sense for the most part. And it took us a while to get to that common sense, but it's there to be found. And I thought, if I could make a film, a documentary about our country and some of these bigger issues that are affecting our country and the people who live here, then maybe I could inspire someone to look at their neighbor and say, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. Tell me why you think the way you do. Tell me why you believe in things the way you believe in them.
Right.
And then I'll tell you why I believe the opposite, and maybe we can find some middle ground. There's a complete lack of that. And I thought about it long and hard. And when I decided to do it, it's like everything I decide to do. I don't just stick my toe in and say, okay, let's try this. No, we went 2 years of working on this. Put the boys on the road trip. I went on a road trip. Then sent another team on a road trip. Hired independent film crews all over the United States because if something happened, like when Parkland, Florida, the shooting there happened, we couldn't roll a crew from Oregon in a truck fast enough with all our camera gear to get there to cover it and get interviews fast enough. It just wouldn't be possible. It would be over with by the time it,
Right.
So we would hire a local film crew. Jolly Roger Productions down there did a great job. Got us some amazing interviews. Other places where there'd be rallies at Berkeley. We had a film crew 15 minutes away from the Berkeley campus that was ready to go out there. We had to hire security to go with them to those rallies because Antifa was so violent that one of the guys was carrying a $50,000 red camera and got maced.
Wow.
Yeah, that isn't good for red cameras. So you have to hire security for these things because there's so much anger in some of these events. And a lot of that's reflected in the film to show, I want the viewer to look at this film and say, that anger is ridiculous. Why are we having this ridiculous anger? Why can't we just have a normal conversation? And that's what really inspired me. The more I took my family unit and looked at it and realized it was really about the nation, that's what inspired me to go down that path.
And it's funny because I have had those same experiences when I get together with my own. I have 3 children, all adults, and 2 of them are married and 1 of them single. And we've had these same conversations, even so much that I say, okay, on this weekend, we're not going to talk about politics because it's so inflammatory. But you're absolutely right. The thing that keeps conversations civil with your family is you're always going to be family. You're always going to be related in some way or another. And so then as frustrated as you might get, you still have to come back. You still have to stay in the conversation and find some common ground. So I totally relate to that. The other thing that's interesting that I've experienced, and it's exactly what you're saying, is that we all, depending on your position, we're in our echo echo chamber. And so if you have a persuasion one way or the other, all of your Facebook friends are going to agree with you in one way or another. Yeah, and I'm a fairly conservative person, but there are times that I can't even begin to understand somebody who opposes my opinion or somebody who has an opinion different than mine because I don't have anybody to explain to me in a rational way their position, And so then I appreciate this. So tell me, So tell me, where did you guys go to this? Yeah.
Where didn't we go would be a better short story. But coast to coast. We first started right close. We went to Boise, then Seattle, Portland, hit the big West Coast hubs. Road trip went south, LA, Hollywood, San Diego, curl around southern Arizona along the border. Hooked up with a great guy down there by the name of Tim Foley, Arizona Border Recon. Super nice guy, totally misrepresented in the media. He gave us, the guys actually got to go on a border tour. They showed him where the drug smugglers crossed the border and explained to him, how some misguided people are helping. He gave great content to the film with regard to, let's say, immigration.
Right.
Then the next road trip from there went through the Midwest, Iowa, Wyoming, eastern Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. Did I say Iowa? Yeah. Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, Washington, D.C., New York City. Yeah,
wow.
We hit them all.
So during this journey, and you weren't with them on all those trips, but of course you're looking at the dailies, you're looking at the stuff that's coming in. How have you found your own perspective has evolved? Or has it? Or I don't know, kind of reflect your family unit and how this has changed your own perspective a little bit.
I don't think it's changed the way I feel about particular issues, but what it has done is it's shown me that we need to be more understanding. I need to appreciate what your position is, because we live in a free country. As far as I'm concerned, we live in a free world where we're entitled to think and believe what we want.
Right.
And rather than get angry at you if you don't agree with me, I think that it's important for me to say, okay, I don't agree with you, but that's okay.
Right.
I'm not going to get angry about it. I just need to understand what your position was. So I think what the film did was the film made me appreciate other people's positions and opinions far more than I ever did before. And it gave me the ability to appreciate their position, and to understand it. I wanted to understand what someone's position was more than anything else, because if you can understand it, then you can appreciate it. So if that made sense, once again, it didn't change the way I thought about things, but it, in terms of my own personal views on issues, but it did change the way I looked at other people. And, I just don't get angry about things anymore if we don't agree with one another.
Well, and it's funny, so much of our life is on social media and Facebook right now. And, you can have totally uncivil conversations on a post that you would never say in person to another person because
social media is one of the biggest problems we have today.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful, social media is wonderful if it's used the right way. The problem is you've got memes that are not true, they're hateful. People make a meme. You take my dad, for example, doesn't realize that 90% of the stuff you read on the internet is complete BS, right? So he'll see a meme that says this person did this and he thinks it's true and reposts it on his Facebook page. And it's like, hey, Dad, why would you repost something that isn't true? Oh, it's true. I saw it on the internet. Well, and once again, even texting, any digital form of communication takes out the human interaction.
Right.
When you and I get together and talk about something, we get a chance to hear the inflection in another's voice.
Right.
You get to see the feeling in my face. You get to understand what I'm saying without even hearing the words.
Right.
Whereas in a text message, you just get to say, like you said, inflammatory hate. And that inflammatory hate just spreads. And it's just mean and doesn't have any substance behind it. It's just junk. And if we could tell you want to fix the world, turn off the internet. Turn it off just take a month with no internet. 1 month, no internet. Granted, a lot of people would go bankrupt over that, but you wouldn't have that spreading of ill will in digital form. If we could force people, or better yet, just do away with social media. If you did away with social media, fix a lot of problems. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wonderful things if you're posting things that are positive or actually reporting factual news or events, but so much of it's just false stuff out there. And if you could just turn that stuff off and force people to have a conversation like we're talking here today, I think that the world would be 1,000 times better.
Right. And even though I have my own echo chamber going, I have friends that I would call flaming liberals that I know in person. And it's funny because whenever we connect in person, it's like none of that matters. Who cares? You know, that's my brother, that's my friend, and I'm not going to let some silly political stuff divide our relationship. Yeah.
What was it? You know, we started saying this about the film. We're all different, but we're really the same. And in the film, one of the people who's interviewed says, you know, we all really want the same things.
Yeah.
We all want to have a nice home. We all want to provide for our kids. We all want to have a nice job. We all want to have money in the bank. We all just want to get along. Some of us are more ambitious than others. And, you know, we live in a free country where the harder you work, you know, and the more opportunistic you are, the better you can do. But everybody really wants the same core things. And I think if we just realize that, the other day I was reading, you talk about Facebook, you know, I was reading some posts on the Facebook page for Nation Divided, and these people think it's war. The posts the comments below a post I made were, we are at war with the left. We are at war with the right. You know, we are trying to take our country back. There ain't nothing to take back. This is America. We're all Americans, right? Yeah. And if you're an American, we need to realize that we're all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. If we get our heads screwed on straight. Right now, we're all in the same boat, and half of us are rowing one way, and half of us are rowing the other direction.
Right.
Kind of counterproductive.
Right. So let's switch to production for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So what has happened? Tell us a little bit about the journey of making a documentary, and now where is it at? You're getting ready to release it, and talk a little bit about the hurdles that you've had to jump through to do that.
Well, first off, for the first time ever, we started measuring the size of our video files in terabytes and not gigabytes. You know, it used to be like, wow, we went on a video shoot and shot 100 gigabytes of video. Like, wow, what are we going to do about storage, right? Now it was like, we have dozens of terabytes of footage, hours and hours and hours of footage, and that requires months of scrubbing to find the right sound bites, interviews. And we were granted some wonderful interviews. I mean, we had a great baseline to start with. Harry Reid, the former senator, U.S. Senator from Nevada, left of center, gave us a great interview. Former senator here in Oregon, Gordon Smith, gave us a wonderful interview. All these interviews that we were able to get, Ted Nugent, Adam Winkler, the UCLA professor that's well noted on Second Amendment law. All of these interviews by, let's say, your A-list, they're the baseline. So you scrub through those first, you lay those in. But we knew that the meat and potatoes of this film was going to be the hours and hours and hundreds of interviews of average everyday people. Farmer Joe pulled off a tractor. You know, cowboy pulled off of his horse. You know, get over here, we want an interview for something. Mic him up. We're just going to ask you some questions. And the interviews, I mean, first and foremost, like I said, months. Like, we're talking months and months and months of scrubbing through footage, weeks of editing it, color correcting it, you know, fixing audio. You know, the guys did, you know, Shane Schmidt poured his heart and soul into this in the editing suite. And, you know, Adam Jenner worked on a lot of the graphics and sifting through clips, and Raymond sift through clips, and I sift through clips. And I mean, just this group of us worked tirelessly on it. And I don't think, so one of the problems we have is we tried to do it all at once. And Ian Majak, one of the camera operators in the field producers, said, "What, you know, how do you eat an elephant?"
Yeah, a bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
That's right.
So it's like, okay, now let's slow it all down. Let's go back and let's take little bites of this.
Yeah.
And that's what really kind of allowed me to slow it down, take it into sections. and start taking smaller bites. And then once we realized that we could make a lot of bites real fast, that really reset the stage for how we were going about things, because we were still trying to eat the elephant all in one bite. And because when you're looking at this massive, hard drive, right, and you're looking at this thing and you're going, there's so much there, how are we going to do? So then we got an outline for it, and then we started building out the segments, and then we started realizing we needed infographics, and we had to do research. What are these statistics? What are those statistics? Because we wanted to provide people not just with the opinions of the people in the United States, but also give them hard statistics from U.S. agencies, like the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the FBI. We wanted to have poverty statistics. We wanted to have all of these facts, so our ducks were in a row to show the viewer, here's fact, and here's the opinions on both sides of that fact. Because we want the viewer to be able to identify with somebody. We want them to think through their opinion on the matter, and maybe the film will shape their opinion on something, but also inspire open discussion and dialogue and compromise. And so now, once we got all of the facts and infographics put together, now we're working on a music score. Get the music score. We license the music. Of course, Ted Nugent's segment is done to one of his personal songs. But we had this incredible music score put together, and the next thing I know, we had a film that was 90% done. So then we watched it. We had other producers watch it. A lot of people watched it, gave us some feedback. What do we need? What don't we need? What are we going to get rid of? Go through final cuts, and there we are. 2 years later, we have a film wrapped up and ready to go. And I thought, boy, it's been a long run. Good thing it's over with. And I just realized my job was just getting started, because that was about 6 months ago. Turns out it's a lot harder to get your film out there. You can't get it into theaters without a booker, and maybe theater isn't the best way to go. Now you're talking about, how do we distribute this film? You have to understand that we also, at this point in time, don't just have time invested and equipment invested. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. Yeah. Like to the tune, well, I'm not going to throw out there how much we spent on this film, but it was enough that everybody pretty much said. So now we have to figure out how to monetize the film. We have to recover our investment. And I said all along that if I recovered my investment in the film and affected positive change in a number of people in our country, that it would have all been worthwhile. But I needed to see positive change from that. So first place that it was accepted was it's now on the Amazon platform. You can rent it or buy it. This coming Friday, it's going to go on sale on iTunes. That has been a long road to hoe with the distributor. We had to change some of the technical formats, had to go back in and re-edit a big portion of the film to meet their technical requirements for iTunes. Wow. That's fine. That's just life. You know? Now everything is exactly the way they wanted it, so it's been accepted. It's going to go on for pre-sale Friday, and then 1 week later it'll be live to download and view. Wow. So we're really excited about that. iTunes is the big platform, and then 90 days down the road, it should be available on Netflix if everything goes well. Wow.
So what did you discover when you did the interviews of the cowboys and the guys on the tractor and the people on the street? What did you discover? How did you discover their opinions were different than what we're being told their opinions are?
Well, first off, I'll tell you immediately, there is a massive difference between rural America and urban America in terms of political views. I mean, just incredibly, there's a reason why when you look at a map of the United States by counties, if you look at where Donald Trump won all those counties, over 3,000 counties, and Hillary Clinton won just the urban areas, that tells you everything you need to know just on that one map. The rural Americans are night and day different in terms of their political views. Now, once again, we all have the same core things that we want. We discussed those. But you take like the Second Amendment, for example. Rural America is never going to budge on the Second Amendment. Ever. But the urban America saying, hey, we want gun control. Why do you have to have an AR-15? Why do you have to have a pistol? And you go to rural America, and rural America is like, Second Amendment isn't about my deer rifle. That isn't what the founding fathers of our country were thinking about. They're not saying, well, you need to have a gun to go deer hunting. No, the average everyday American should have a firearm so that they can belong to a militia if need be to, maintain control of our country as a free state. And, the people in urban America are saying, yeah, but that document's hundreds of years old now, and it's irrelevant. Well, it's not irrelevant to a lot of people. It's, and now you take it even more, look at, let's say, since the film was made, you've had Judge Kavanaugh confirmed to the Supreme Court. And you have an even more constitutionalist, federalist, let's say,
right.
View on some of those protections. But then people in urban America will look at, let's say, gay rights, and they're like, oh, those gay people, they don't need any special rights. They don't need this, they don't need that. And so there's just this huge difference between rural and urban America. And we talk about that in the film, and we really show the statistics and the infographics in the film. Mm-hmm. And I think that if there was ever a time in our nation's history to say, whoa, why do we have this big difference? Mr. Urban America, Mr. Rural America, let's sit down at the same table here and let's talk this out. Why are you guys so angry at one another? Let's find common ground here. I think that it would be easy to find the common ground if people just get over being angry.
Right. So, and you're in a unique blend yourself because of this conversation that you've, I don't know how you got to this place, but
sure.
But I think, and you open the film with that. Kind of give us a synopsis of who you are and what your perspective is.
Well, I did this in the film because I wanted the viewer to connect with me on an individual level. I want people to understand that, I'm making this film, but I'm just like you.
Right.
Or at least 90% of the people who watch the film are going to be just like me. I'm right of center. I'm conservative, right? But I'm more toward the center than right. I have a firm belief in the Second Amendment. That'll never waver. Do I think that there should be some, checks and balances on who can buy firearms? You're doggone right. I think that, people who are criminals shouldn't be able to get firearms. I think that if someone's on the terror watch list, they shouldn't, or the no-fly list or whatever, they shouldn't be able to get a firearm. If you're mentally, deficient, or you have mental health issues, you shouldn't be able to buy a firearm. But on the other hand, I think the rest of us that are just fine, at least I think I am, should be able to, purchase a firearm and own an AR-15 or a bolt-action rifle or semi-automatic pistol or a shotgun, whatever we want, because we're law-abiding citizens. And we live in a country that has always had that firearms culture, especially in rural America. Are there problems, in cities? Sure, but, gun control, there's lots of gun control laws out there. You just need to enforce the ones that are on the books, and we wouldn't need any new ones. But, you take that, and then I've had some of my opinions over the years shaped. Like, I am strongly for, gays having equal rights. My brother's gay, and that he helped me see that, that there was no difference between he and I, or who he decides he wants to marry. I look at those different issues like immigration. I'm not for a wall. Okay. We don't need to build a wall. We talk about this in the film. There's a great alternative to a wall, but there does need to be an immigration policy. A lot of my friends say we need to deport all the illegal aliens. Come on, that's not realistic. Right. There's 13 million or 11 million or whatever the number is illegal immigrants in the United States. And if you think you're going to deport them all and not affect the U.S. agricultural segment or industrial or all these places, because these people have jobs. They're just illegally working under false Social Security numbers, whatever it may be. Instead of doing that, let's come up with an immigration policy and let's give them a path to citizenship. You should have to do something for that because you're here illegally. You're breaking the law to be here. But let's be realistic in how you can't deport them all and then let them come back legally. That's just not cost effective and it's not reasonable. Take DACA. A lot of people disagreed with President Trump pulling off the protections for DACA. What he was really doing, I think, in my opinion, was forcing Congress to get off their butts and do something about it, because they've been kicking that can down the road for how many presidential? President Obama had the House and the Senate. Democrats held the House and Senate, and they scream about, oh, we're for the Hispanics. Okay, what'd you guys do for the DACA? You just gave them DACA. It's an executive order. Why didn't the Democrats pass a law when they had a chance? Why haven't the Republicans passed a law while they had a chance? Nobody wants to pick that can up.
Yeah, they don't have the courage.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't. They just keep kicking it down the road. And, and it's going to continue that way until maybe the Hispanic community realizes that the Republicans or the Democrats are not their friend, and that they need to start demanding that both parties do something instead of just siding with one or the other.
Yeah.
Start, talking to candidates about their personal stances on these issues. So I'm for immigration reform, and I know that we need to get something passed immediately. All of these issues, I felt like I needed to explain myself in the film. Like, I believe in climate change. Anybody who's got both eyes open understands.
Something's happening.
The climate's changing, all right? We just had a storm slam into Florida. That's the biggest one ever. And the one right before it was the biggest one ever, right? So there's big changes. I'm in the woods all the time. I'm in the field. I'm in rural places, climbing mountains. I've seen it change in Alaska. I've seen it changing in Mexico. I've been all of these places. And the climate is changing. Now, what's up for debate, and this is way above my intelligence level, is to what degree is man affecting that change, or is it occurring naturally? Yes, we have greenhouse gases and carbon monoxide and all of these things, but is it measurable? Can we measure it? I need somebody to show me the science that says man is causing this, and here's the scientific proof behind it before I could get on. But that's my personal belief. There's a lot of people that believe that it's all man caused, and there's a lot of people who believe that it's naturally occurring. As long as everybody agrees that something's happening, and
Right.
and doing something's better than doing nothing.
Right.
So,
Well, this is great, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about the film. Do you have, what's your next thing? What do you want to do next?
I'd really like to do a few more documentary films. I'd love to do one on polar bears and caribou, maybe something on the Arctic. There's a lot of bad information.
Yeah.
There's a lot of...
And you've been there.
I've been there a lot. I've been there more times than some of the biologists that are writing papers and making policy on the wildlife up there. And there's a lot of bad information, and there's a lot of, I guess, when you take a polar bear and you turn it into a political, let's say like a, I don't know how you say it, like a pawn. Yeah, it's like, the polar bear now becomes your pawn in this game on climate change. Well, that's not fair to the polar bear, and it's just bad information. I'd love to do one on that. The other thing I'd really thought about doing was maybe taking something that's more localized in terms of like the state of Oregon. We were going to do it on Measure 44 and 43, the gun control initiatives in Oregon, and embed camera operators with both sides, the pros and the against, and kind of see their perspectives and where it ended up. Of course, neither one of them ended up on the ballot this year, but that's a few more documentaries. I'm trying to not get away from doing outdoor television, but I've been doing it for so long that I feel like to be fulfilled as a filmmaker, I want to spread my wings a little bit and see what else is out there. A lot of that's going to depend on the success or failure, hopefully success, of a nation divided. We're going into midterm elections, and we should see a lot of downloads on that, and hopefully the people get out there, look for it on iTunes and Amazon, watch it, and I hope that they're inspired by that. One other thing that I think that's worth mentioning is that, we are going into midterm elections, especially here in Oregon. We have a lot of people in our area that don't support our governor, right? But how many of those people get out and vote, right? So, the message I have for everybody day after day when they talk about, well, I hope in November, somebody else, that Newt wins this election. Like, well, I hope you get out and vote.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is that there's a neck and neck race for the governor's seat in Oregon, and in a lot of states, there's a lot of, things that are up for grabs. If you want change, if you don't agree with what's going on in your state or your county or your city, these elections are your opportunity to help bring about change.
Right.
Don't sit on your butt at home watching the news on election night going, my vote wouldn't have counted anyway.
Yeah.
Because if you and a bunch of other people would get off your butts, climb off your four-wheeler, get out of your truck, walk out of the office, register to vote, cast your ballot, and make your voice and your opinion heard, now I think you have grounds to say, well, I didn't like what happened on that day. But I'll tell you right now, if somebody comes to me the day after the election and says, well, I can't believe that person won, I'll be like, wow, did you get out and vote? And they say, no, my vote wouldn't have counted. I'd tell them, shut up.
Yeah.
Because you didn't make your voice heard then, and I'm not going to hear your voice now. So.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming by, and I appreciate you, again, like I said at the beginning, appreciate you being local here. And you guys are in the process of building a studio in the LeGrand Business Park, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so, you know, that's a huge investment into our community, into LeGrand, and I appreciate it. I know that you do a lot of things for young hunters and donate guns and bows, and you've done a lot of that type of stuff. And I appreciate not only the things that you do, you know, to help bring recognition to Eastern Oregon, but also the things that you do to support local kids and positive hunting activities and so on and so forth. So.
Got to get them outside.
That's right. Get them off their phones and outside.
That's correct.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate having me today, Brent.
And thanks a lot, LeGrand Live, for tuning into our first show of Eastern Oregon Conversations. We're going to be having more of these. I probably won't always be the host of this, but it's a forum that we can talk about relevant issues with interesting people, and we hope that you will tune back in. I want to be sure and thank our sponsors, Eastern Oregon Network Incorporated, EONI, Grand Ronde Hospital, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, and Med Transport. Be sure and tune in more, share this content if you care to do so. Have a good day.